The air in the Capitol building was thick with tension on that crisp April morning in 2025. The marble halls, usually echoing with a steady hum of legislative business, seemed to hold their breath as two formidable women prepared to cross paths in a confrontation that had been brewing for weeks. Jasmine Crockett, the fiery Democratic representative from Texas, had been making waves with her unapologetic rhetoric and bold stances, while Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary in history, had been tasked with defending the Trump administration's latest moves with a cool, calculated precision. Their clash, when it finally happened, would be the talk of Washington and beyond. Jasmine Crockett had never been one to shy away from a fight. A former public defender turned congresswoman, she'd built her reputation on speaking her mind, often with a flair that left her opponents scrambling to respond. Her constituents in Dallas loved her for it. Her sharp tongue and unrelenting passion for justice had carried her from the courtroom to the House floor with a momentum that few could ignore. By April 2025, she'd become a prominent voice in the Democratic Party, unafraid to call out what she saw as hypocrisy or overreach, whether it came from her Republican colleagues across the aisle or the administration itself. Her recent comments about Elon Musk, Tesla, and the broader influence of billionaires in politics had stirred up a hornet's nest, drawing sharp rebukes from the White House and its allies. But Jasmine wasn't one to back down. She doubled down instead, framing her critiques as a defense of free speech and the common person. Karoline Leavitt, on the other hand, was a different kind of force. At just 27, she'd risen through the ranks of the Trump orbit with a speed that left political analysts both impressed and wary. Appointed White House press secretary shortly after Trump's return to office, she brought a youthful energy to the role, paired with a steely resolve that made her a formidable spokesperson. Her days were spent fielding questions from a press corps that ranged from skeptical to outright hostile, spinning the administration's policies into a narrative of strength and renewal. She'd mastered the art of the soundbite, delivering 7-word zingers that shut down reporters and rallied the base. But beneath her polished exterior, there was a growing frustration with figures like Crockett, lawmakers who, in her view, thrived on chaos and provocation rather than solutions. The stage for their confrontation had been set weeks earlier, during a heated exchange that played out across news cycles and social media. It started with Crockett's participation in a nationwide call organized by the Tesla Takedown movement, a grassroots effort urging Tesla owners to ditch their cars and investors to dump their stock. Crockett had been vocal, accusing Musk of wielding unchecked power through federal contracts and influence over policy. "The rest of us don't get to pick and choose federal protections like he does," she'd said, her voice dripping with indignation. "I'll say it 50,000 times if I have to. This isn't about violence, it's about accountability." The White House, predictably, fired back. Leavitt took to the briefing room podium, accusing Crockett of stoking division and misrepresenting the administration's relationship with Musk. The congresswoman should apologize to Tesla shareholders and focus on her job, Leavitt had said, her tone icy but controlled. That exchange might have fizzled out, relegated to the endless churn of political spats, if not for what happened next. Attorney General Pam Bondi entered the fray, issuing a public warning to Crockett to tread very carefully with her Musk criticism. Bondi's remarks, delivered on Fox News, carried an implicit threat, suggesting that Crockett's words could be interpreted as incitement. Crockett didn't take it lying down. "She's trying to politicize my free speech," she shot back in a press conference, her eyes flashing with defiance. "I won't be silenced by anyone, least of all someone who thinks she can intimidate me into submission." The back and forth escalated, with Leavitt defending Bondi and Crockett accusing the administration of bullying tactics. By the time April 5th rolled around, the tension had reached a boiling point. It was a Friday morning when the confrontation finally happened. Crockett had just finished a meeting with her staff in her Capitol office, reviewing legislation and strategizing for the week ahead. She stepped into the hallway, her heels clicking against the polished floor, a stack of papers tucked under her arm. She was mid-conversation with a colleague, Representative Tim Burchett, discussing an upcoming committee hearing, when she noticed a small crowd gathering near the end of the corridor. Reporters, cameras, and a few congressional aides milled about, their attention fixed on a figure approaching from the opposite direction, Caroline Leavitt. Leavitt had come to the Hill to meet with Republican lawmakers, part of her role in coordinating the administration's messaging with its allies in Congress. She dressed for the occasion in a sharp navy blazer and skirt, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Her presence in the Capitol wasn't unusual, but the timing felt deliberate. Word had spread that she'd been briefed on Crockett's latest remarks, another fiery speech delivered the night before at a Dallas fundraiser, where she'd called out the administration for coddling billionaires while regular folks get squeezed. Leavitt, it seemed, had decided to take the opportunity to address Crockett directly. As Leavitt drew closer, the reporters parted slightly, their cameras trained on the two women. Crockett slowed her pace, her expression shifting from casual to guarded. Burchett, sensing the shift, murmured something under his breath and stepped slightly to her side, as if to shield her from what was coming. Leavitt stopped a few feet away, her posture straight and her gaze unwavering. For a moment, the hallway was silent, save for the faint hum of a distant air conditioner and the soft clicks of camera shutters. "Representative Crockett," Leavitt began, her voice clear and clipped. "I think it's time we had a conversation, face to face, about the reckless things you've been saying." Crockett raised an eyebrow, shifting the papers to her other arm. "Reckless? That's rich, coming from someone who spends her days spinning lies for a man who can't tell the truth if it hit him in the face. What's this about, Caroline? You here to lecture me?" Leavitt didn't flinch. "I'm here because your words have consequences. You've been throwing around accusations about Elon Musk and this administration without evidence, and it's stirring up trouble. You're a lawmaker. You should know better." Crockett let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Consequences? Oh, honey, I know all about consequences. I've been dealing with them since I was a black girl in Texas fighting for a seat at the table. Don't come at me with that sanctimonious tone like you're the arbiter of responsibility. Your boss thrives on chaos. Don't pretend otherwise." The reporters scribbled furiously, their cameras zooming in. Leavitt's jaw tightened, but she pressed on. "This isn't about chaos. It's about accountability. You accused Musk of getting special treatment, but you've got no proof. You're just riling people up, and when it backfires, you'll dodge the blame." "Backfires?" Crockett's voice rose, her Texas drawl sharpening. "You think I'm scared of a little pushback? I said what I said because it's true. Musk gets kid glove treatment while the rest of us are left scrambling. And don't you dare tell me I'm dodging anything. I stand by every word." Leavitt took a step closer, her voice lowering but no less firm. "You're standing by words that could hurt people. Tesla shareholders, workers, real people, not just political pawns. You want to talk accountability? Look at your own actions." That was the spark that set Crockett off. Her eyes narrowed, and she leaned forward, her voice dropping into a fierce, controlled cadence. "Don't you lecture me about real people, Caroline. I've spent my life fighting for real people. Families who can't pay their bills, kids who don't have a fair shot, communities your administration ignores unless there's a photo op involved. You don't get to waltz in here with your polished little talking points and act like you're the voice of reason." I'm done with this nonsense. Leavitt opened her mouth to respond, but Crockett wasn't finished. She stepped closer, her finger jabbing the air for emphasis. You want to talk about hurting people? Let's talk about the policies you defend. Cuts to healthcare, tax breaks for the rich, deportations based on clerical errors. You think I'm the problem? Look in the mirror, sweetheart. Your whole operation is built on smoke and mirrors, and I'm not here to play along. The hallway erupted into a low buzz as reporters whispered to each other, capturing every word. Leavitt's composure slipped for a fraction of a second, her lips pressed into a thin line, her hands clenching at her sides. But she recovered quickly, her voice steady as she fired back. You're good at the theatrics, I'll give you that. But this isn't a courtroom or a rally. It's the real world. You're not helping anyone with this grandstanding. You're just making noise. Noise. Crockett's laugh was sharp now, almost a bark. You call it noise because you can't handle the truth. I'm not here to whisper politely while you all steamroll over people's lives. If that's noise to you, then get used to it, because I'm not shutting up. Burchett, who'd been silent until now, cleared his throat and stepped forward slightly. All right, ladies, maybe we take this down a notch, he said, his Tennessee accent softening the tension. No need to turn this into a cage match. Crockett shot him a glance but didn't back off. I'm fine, Tim. She came looking for me. She can handle what she gets. Leavitt ignored Burchett entirely, her eyes locked on Crockett. You think you're untouchable because you wrap yourself in this righteous anger. But you're not. Keep pushing, and you'll see what happens. That was the line that broke the dam. Crockett's face hardened, and she took another step forward, closing the gap between them until they were nearly toe-to-toe. What happens? What's that supposed to mean, Caroline? You threatening me now? Because I've faced worse than you and your little press badge. Say what you mean, or get out of my way. The air crackled with the intensity of the moment. The reporters held their breath, pens poised, cameras rolling. Leavitt didn't retreat, but she didn't escalate either. For a long beat, the two women stood there, locked in a silent standoff, each daring the other to make the next move. Finally, Leavitt spoke, her voice low and deliberate. I'm not here to threaten you, Jasmine. I'm here to tell you the truth. You're playing a dangerous game, and it's not going to end the way you think. Crockett smirked, though her eyes burned with fury. Dangerous game? The only danger here is you thinking you can intimidate me into silence. You don't know who you're dealing with. With that, she turned on her heel, brushing past Leavitt with a force that made the younger woman step back. Burchett followed, casting a wary glance at the press corps as Crockett strode down the hall, her head high. Leavitt watched her go, her expression unreadable, then turned to the reporters with a tight smile. No further comment, she said, before walking away in the opposite direction. The aftermath was immediate and chaotic. Clips of the confrontation flooded X within minutes, racking up millions of views as pundits and ordinary users dissected every word. Crockett just ate Leavitt alive, one post read, accompanied by a fire emoji. Leavitt held her ground, class act, countered another. News outlets scrambled to frame the story. Some painted Crockett as a fearless truth-teller, others as an unhinged provocateur. Leavitt, meanwhile, was hailed by Trump allies as a steady hand, though critics accused her of picking a fight she couldn't win. Back in her office, Crockett sat at her desk, staring out the window at the Capitol dome. Her staff buzzed around her, fielding calls from reporters and allies alike, But she was quiet, replaying the encounter in her mind. She'd lost her temper, she knew that, but she didn't regret it. Leavitt had come for her, and she'd given as good as she got. Still, there was a nagging sense that this wasn't over. The White House wouldn't let it drop, and neither would she. Across town, in the West Wing, Leavitt briefed her team on the incident, her tone clipped and professional. "She's loud, but she's not invincible," she told them. "We stay the course, focus on the agenda, not her tantrums." Privately, though, she felt the sting of Crockett's words. The Congresswoman had gotten under her skin, and that wasn't something she'd admit out loud. This was Washington, after all. Every clash was a test, and she'd be damned if she let Crockett come out on top. The confrontation marked a turning point, though neither woman could have known it then. For Crockett, it solidified her image as a fighter, a voice that wouldn't be cowed by power. For Leavitt, it was a baptism by fire, a reminder that her role demanded more than just poise, it required resilience. The two would cross paths again, their rivalry becoming a fixture of the political landscape in the months to come. But on that April morning, as the echoes of their words faded from the Capitol halls, one thing was clear. Neither Jasmine Crockett nor Caroline Leavitt was backing down anytime soon. In the immediate aftermath, the Capitol buzzed with a frenetic energy. Staffers whispered in corners, exchanging theories about what had just unfolded. Some saw it as a clash of egos, others as a microcosm of the broader partisan divide tearing through Washington. Crockett's team huddled in her office, parsing every detail of the encounter. Her legislative director, a wiry man named Marcus with a penchant for nervous pacing, replayed the footage on his phone. "You were fierce, Jasmine," he said, pausing the video where she jabbed her finger at Leavitt. "But we need to be ready for the blowback." Crockett leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed. "Let it come," she replied, her voice steady. "They want to paint me as the loudmouth? Fine. I'll keep talking until they listen." Her staff exchanged glances, admiration mixed with unease. They knew her resolve, but they also knew the machine she was up against. The White House had resources, reach, and a knack for turning narratives to their favor. Still, none of them dared suggest she soften her stance. Across the city, Leavitt sat in a small briefing room, her deputy press secretary scribbling notes as she spoke. The room smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink, a stark contrast to the polished grandeur of the Capitol. "We don't escalate," she instructed, her tone clipped. "Crockett wants a circus. Don't give it to her. Stick to the message: stability, progress, results." Her team nodded, but there was a flicker of doubt in their eyes. Crockett's fire had caught them off guard, and Leavitt's cool deflection hadn't fully doused it. Outside, the press corps swarmed like bees around a hive. Reporters typed furiously on laptops perched on hallway benches, crafting headlines that ranged from measured to sensational. "Crockett versus Leavitt, tempers flare in Capitol Showdown," read one draft. Another, bolder, "Texas rep loses it as Trump aide stands firm." The footage looped endlessly on cable news, pundits dissecting every gesture, the tilt of Crockett's head, the clench of Leavitt's fists. It was raw, unscripted, and irresistible to a public hungry for drama. In Crockett's office, the phone rang non-stop. Allies called to cheer her on, progressive lawmakers who saw her as a beacon, activists who'd long admired her grit. "You gave her hell, Jasmine," said a voice on speakerphone, belonging to a union organizer from Dallas. "That's what we need, someone who won't bow." Crockett smiled faintly, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying Leavitt's parting shot. "You'll see what happens." It wasn't fear she felt, but a simmering resolve to prove she couldn't be rattled. Leavitt, meanwhile, fielded her own calls. A senior advisor from the White House counsel's office was on the line, his voice low and cautious. "Caroline, you handled it well, but watch your step. Crockett's got a knack for turning these things into crusades." Leavitt nodded, though he couldn't see it. "She's a loudmouth, not a strategist," she replied. "I'm not worried." But as she hung up, her fingers drummed the table, a rare tell of the tension she wouldn't voice. The hallway where it all went down had emptied out, but the air still felt charged. A janitor swept the floor, oblivious to the weight of what had transpired. The marble gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a silent witness to the clash. Nearby, Representative Burchett lingered, chatting with a colleague about the incident. "Jasmine's got fire, no doubt," he said, shaking his head. "But that Leavitt girl, she's tougher than she looks. This ain't over." Back in her office, Crockett's staff began drafting a statement. They wanted to get ahead of the narrative, frame her outburst as principled passion rather than unchecked anger. "Keep it short," she told them, sipping from a mug of lukewarm coffee. "Say I stood up for my constituents, period. No apologies." Marcus hesitated, pen hovering over his notepad. "You sure? They'll twist it either way." She fixed him with a look. "Let them twist. I'm not here to play nice." Leavitt's team, too, worked on damage control. They drafted a tweet from her official account, 7 words, per her signature style: "Focus on facts, not tantrums. Moving forward." It was concise, dismissive, and designed to project calm authority. She approved it with a curt nod, though privately she wondered if it was enough. Crockett's energy had a way of lingering, like smoke you couldn't wave away. The X platform lit up with reactions, a digital battlefield mirroring the physical one. Crockett supporters flooded the site with praise, calling her a warrior and the voice we need. Leavitt's backers countered, labeling her poised and unshaken. Memes emerged, Crockett's finger-pointing set to dramatic music, Leavitt's tight smile captioned with snarky quips. The clash had transcended policy, becoming a cultural moment. In her office, Crockett scrolled through the posts, her lips twitching into a half-smile. She appreciated the support, but she wasn't naive. She knew the other side was mobilizing too. Bots, trolls, and pundits ready to paint her as unhinged. "They'll come for me," she murmured to herself. "Let 'em try." She set her phone down and turned to the window, the Capitol dome a stark silhouette against the morning sky. Leavitt, back at the White House, avoided social media entirely. She'd learned early in her tenure that X was a double-edged sword, useful for messaging, brutal for morale. Instead, she reviewed briefing notes, her pen slashing through lines she deemed irrelevant. Crockett's words echoed in her head. Your whole operation is smoke and mirrors, and she hated how they stuck. She prided herself on precision, not theatrics, and yet here she was, drawn into a spectacle. The press corps, still camped outside the Capitol, began filing their stories. Some reached out to Crockett's office for comment, others to Leavitt's. Both teams stonewalled, letting the footage speak for itself. It was a gamble. Silence could amplify the moment or let it fizzle. For now, the raw exchange dominated the airwaves, a loop of defiance and defiance met. Crockett's colleague, Burchett, wandered into her office, a styrofoam cup of coffee in hand. "You all right after that?" he asked, settling into a chair. She nodded, though her jaw was tight. "I'm good, Tim. Just tired of the games." He chuckled. Games are all we got here. You shook her up, though. Leavitt's not used to pushback like that. Leavitt, meanwhile, debriefed with her deputy in the West Wing. She's emotional, not tactical, she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We outlast her. Her deputy frowned. Maybe. But she's got a spark. People feed off it. Leavitt didn't respond, her mind already shifting to the next press briefing, the next fight. In Crockett's office, Marcus handed her the final statement. She scanned it, 2 sentences, blunt and unyielding. Looks good, she said, handing it back. Post it. Within minutes, it was live, a declaration of intent that fueled her base and infuriated her foes. She leaned back, exhaling slowly, the weight of the morning settling in. Leavitt saw the statement pop up on her phone as she walked to her car. She read it twice, her expression unreadable. Predictable, she muttered, slipping the device into her pocket. But as she climbed into the back seat, the Capitol fading in the distance, she couldn't shake the feeling that Crockett had landed a punch she hadn't dodged. The janitor finished his sweep, the hallway pristine once more. The cameras had moved on, the reporters chasing their deadlines. Yet the echo of that clash lingered, a ripple that hadn't yet found its shore. Crockett and Leavitt, each in their corners, braced for what came next. 2 forces, unyielding, locked in a dance neither would abandon.